Would you like to be a successful actor long-term for an entire career? How about a writer, a successful writer for an entire career? Well, those don't happen for just anybody, but it did happen for our guest today, NCIS executive producer Scott Williams. He came to our class and we had a great interview with him, but near the end of class, the students got to get up and do a mock audition for them where they practiced what we worked on this month in class, which was working from confidence, being present and connected. Each one of them did an amazing job. That was a great part of class, but what you're gonna see right now is the interview I had with Scott where he talks about starting with the aspirations of being an actor and then switching into being a writer and a long-time, very successful producer on many shows, including NCIS. It's gonna be a great interview for you to watch if you're an actor or a writer, so check it out. All right, I'm so excited.
Me too.
With my guest today. You know, a couple of years ago, I had an audition for NCIS that I sent in, you know, a self-tape. You don't know what happens with these things. Admiral, NCIS, at your service. But I ended up booking it, and it was a great script. I ended up playing this guy that was obsessed with a female admiral. Some people might say he was a stalker, but but I liked her. She was pretty, you know? And
we just got him out of the stalker file. We were like, oh, Gregg Binkley's available. This is great.
Exactly. But the episode opened with me talking to myself in the mirror, you know, trying to think of how I could impress her.
Great.
And then I thought, well, maybe if I wear an NCIS hat. So I found this NCIS hat, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's the thing. Admiral, NCIS, at your service. And then there's a scene later where I show up at a big event where she's going to be, outdoor event, a lot of people, and I'm walking up to go see her, and I get intercepted, you know, by, you know, all the, you know, stars of the show, Gary Cole, and they all stop me, and I'm like, no, I just want to go see her, and next thing you know, there's an explosion up on the stage, and people assume that I did it. But spoiler alert, I was innocent. Now they did interrogate
but still
me.
Creepy.
Still creepy. Still creepy. But during that time, that was a great week of shooting. I ended up talking to the writer of the episode, the executive producer of the show. We got along well. And then, I don't know, a little while later, we were on strike, and I'm walking around the studio by myself, and he comes this way. I'm like, hey, and so, hey, let's talk, you know? So we walked around for probably 45 minutes and had a great time.
Disney over there.
That's right, yeah. And we talked sports mostly.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
But we really got along well. Turns out he lives in my neighborhood.
Yep.
Actually, his house is way bigger, so I live in his neighborhood, I think. And we've kept each other.
You have a lovely house. I've seen
yeah, well, thank you. But we've kept up with each other. And then I had my book coming out that she just mentioned, Get Your Act Together, Finding Success in Acting and Life, available at Amazon. And I asked him, would you mind endorsing the book? And he said, oh, it'd be my honor. And he just wrote a beautiful endorsement. And, you know, a lot of times people think of people that reach these heights on the other side of the camera that they want to isolate from everybody, but he's far from that. He's got a great heart, generous spirit, as evidenced by the fact that he's here tonight. So please welcome Scott Williams.
That was a lovely introduction. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Scott. And
the feeling is mutual, though. Working with Gregg was phenomenal. I should have been more familiar with your work, but to be honest, after you worked on the show, every time I turned on my TV, it seemed like I saw you in various roles that you played over the years. There he is again! Oh my God, there he is! So yeah, I came away a huge fan, and now obviously knowing your body of work, it's even, you know, my esteem for you could not be greater as an actor, but also as a person. So.
Well, I appreciate that, Scott, and we're so glad you're here. But I think, you know, we have a lot of actors here, some writers as well, that look forward to maybe asking questions here in a bit. But you wanted to be an actor at the beginning, and in fact, you were.
I always say I was such a good actor. I'm a writer now, so
I'm a
recovering actor that became a writer.
But what did you love about acting while you were doing it?
I love about acting what I love about writing, which is communicating, which is reaching people and conveying a part of myself to others. It feels really nice. And you know, as a kid, I didn't know what it entailed. I knew that, as you know, I'm going to date myself, but like the 3 movies I saw as a kid was like Poseidon Adventure, Planet of the Apes, and a movie called Willard with about Bruce Davison with his rats, you know. And I was like, I want to do that. And growing up in Yonkers, New York, you know, and getting out of college where I didn't do any theater, I was you know, I played football, I was a radio DJ, and I bartended. And so when I said, I'm going to go to New York to be an actor, because it was sort of that eating at me thing that if I don't at least try, and I don't want to regret when I turn 30 not having tried it. But when I said to friends, I'm going to go to New York and be an actor, I may as well have said astronaut. They were like, you know, like, you? Why? You know. But at any rate, and then I went to New York, and I kind of thought, you know, where's my movie star application that I can fill out, and I'll be on the cover of magazines in 2 years. And then it was the hard road of class and auditions and failure and never not bartending. I tended to bar for over, you know, for 12 years from college to New York to LA, and then, you know, got a little bit of work, commercial work, soap work, you know, lots of you know, like black box theater. And then, you know, as I was approaching 30, it was like, well, if I don't give LA a chance, I don't want to regret that when I'm 40. So I eventually moved out here and kept up the same thing. Some work, started to get a little bit of sitcom work.
You started a theater company as well, right?
I started a little theater company called, when I moved out here, at the time, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure was the big thing. So all my friends in New York, because I'm a lifetime New Yorker, and they were like, don't be falling in for any of that California bullshit. Like, don't be most excellent. Like, don't be doing that. So when I came out here, a bunch of expat New Yorker friends and I started this little theater company called the Most Excellent Theater Company, and that was really where we would sort of throw our hats over the wall and book a theater a month in advance. And you know, I was bartending, and so you know, I said, everybody give me $100, I'll book a theater, and we'll just put on a showcase, basically, with, you know, bring in scenes. And you know, scenes that take place in a restaurant, and we'll have it all be the same restaurant. We're so clever; they're all going to come in and out of the same restaurant, and we'll audition for people. And you know, before we all had our cell phones and you could send tapes in, it was like you had to drag producers and casting people out to come to a little black box theater, like sort of like this. This is feel like this is sort of the vibe. I'd be thrilled with a house like this at our place. There used to be a thing that if the audience, if the cast outnumbered the audience, you didn't have to go on, and we'd be like, I don't care, we'll go on. We don't, you know, we just wanted to work. And then at some point, though, I started to write for that theater company where everybody would chip in, and then had a bunch of actors about 2 weeks before come to me and say, you know, we don't like the play we chose, we don't like each other, like, can we get our money back? And as a bartender, I probably had their $600 in my sock drawer, but my ego was like, give me one night. And I pulled out this old IBM Selectra typewriter, if you remember the one with the ball, you know, that old thing. And I just plunked out, and I'd been an English major in college, so I knew how to like bullshit my way through a term paper. So having been an actor now, I knew how to, you know, I didn't think I could ever write a whole play, but I just said, let me a scene, an SNL type sketch with 6 characters and stuff. So, and it just, I always describe it as, for the first time, like, the applause came from within. Like, I was enjoying it, like, this, oh, then she says this, and then he says that. Oh, aren't I clever? And it's probably the last time I felt that way. But now it's like, fuck, what does she say now? But why did I do this? Why did I start this job? But no, but and then you know, when I had the actors read it and like it and then put it up for a house and people responded, I was like, it was like I was a heroin addict immediately. I was addicted to this, and I took every writing class I could get, and eventually I started wanting to write my Rocky, a thing for me, a vehicle for me. But then ultimately I just was like, you know what, fuck it, I'm gonna just write to what works. And it's like that, I always describe it as the very bumpy road of acting, for me at least, and this rather smooth writing road where everybody that read my stuff kind of responded to it. So I was very blessed in that way.
That's terrific. You know, there's a quote from Joseph Campbell, sometimes you have to give up the life you plan to have the life that's waiting for you.
Yeah, for sure. And it wasn't a wrenching decision, which was the good thing. I didn't have to go, oh, do I have to really pass up back? I was actually writing like a spec script, you know, just nobody was paying for me or anything, and I got a call from my agent, one of those calls you get at like 3. Hey, at 5 o'clock, can you be at Abbot Kinney in Venice? And I live in the Valley, and I was like, fuck, all right, yes, I'll sit in traffic to sell Tide and for a commercial I hadn't booked like in a year. And my then girlfriend, now wife, was like, you know, hey, why don't you not go? Why don't you say no? And so I was like, oh, can I? And I felt so bold that when I called back and said, you know what, I'm not going to make it. In fact, you know what, don't send me out at all anymore. I think I'm done. And I kind of like quit acting kind of on the spot, and it felt fine because I was so invested in this thing that, again, I wasn't getting paid for. I still had my bar shift, but I knew like I just found my passion.
Yeah.
And I could do it you know, I didn't have to wait for someone to call me to do it. I could just wake up and do it. So ultimately, eventually bartending helped me get success.
Well, that's the thing with bartending. You continued to bartend even though you had these other dreams. I think it's so important to have some sort of steady job. You know,
Totally.
I ended up working at a restaurant called Ed DeBevick's. Did you ever go in there?
Oh God, yes, of course.
Diner.
Yeah, the burger joint.
Yeah, I was I was waiting tables as a character.
Yeah.
You guys didn't. It was a '50s diner. As soon as you walked in, all the waiters were actors playing.
Oh my God!
Characters.
In Pulp Fiction, there's that great, you know,
Yeah.
where they dance. You're like Buddy Holly walking up to the table, man, like waiting on people. That's
Well, I was Barney Fife though. Well, that's
you. Oh, of course you are. Yes, of course.
But I did that. Paul actually
Oh my God, that's
was
amazing.
Elvis.
Really?
Yeah.
That's incredible.
That's where we met. Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, and then
Have you ever
Paul-
seen his Barney Fife? It's like,
Well, Paul subsequently became an incredibly successful performer on Royal Caribbean. He just got back doing all these voices. So
That's
we,
so cool.
We worked there, and eventually one day the director of Revenge of the Nerds 3 came in. He was one of my customers. He ended up casting me in that role. I got my agents there. I got so many breaks, but you got some breaks.
well, you met
by-
Carradine then on that. Then
Yeah,
I saw
I did,
when he passed, I saw you share about him and stuff. I
Exactly,
read some. I was like, oh yeah, you were in that too. So,
Yeah, but you made connections from bartending as well.
I was behind the bar at a place called, it's still there, Harvell's in Santa Monica on 4th Street, and a regular customer used to come in this all the time, Vinny, this kind of half a wise guy from Chicago, and he came in one night with Sean Penn, and I, you know, I'd been around celebrities before. I just shot the shit, you know, who's winning the game, whatever it was. A couple of beers. Sean leaves. I grab Vinny over the bar because at this point, I'd written about 5 or 6 feature scripts. You know, in the day that you weren't just emailing PDFs out to people, you were like printing the thing and putting brads in it and putting it in an envelope with a cover letter and licking it and stamping it and putting it, and then waiting 3 weeks to hear no, and then, you know. So lots of rejection, lots of no's, you know. And by this time I was coached by a friend to just say, like, just collect no's. Like, don't go in expecting a yes, just go in, because the more no's you get, eventually you're gonna get around to a yes.
Great.
So the no's weren't hurting quite as much, but I was still pretty desperate. And so I just grabbed Vinny and just said, look, you gotta hook me up. I got a script that Sean can star in, he can direct it, he can rewrite it, I don't give a shit, I need a break. So Vinny's like, okay, give me the script. So about a week later, some woman that came in that you would never put together with Sean or Vinny, but she came in going, hey, Sean gave me your script, he's really busy and he couldn't read, but do you need an agent? And I was like, yes. And a friend of hers had just made junior agent at Gersh. And so that script got me to him. I did a little rewrite on it for him. He was, you know, 25. I was in my early 30s by this time. And you know, we sent it out. I got 17 meetings off this one script. But yeah, well, 15 or 16 of them were like completely blowing smoke up my ass. So say, hey, you're great. Let us know when you write something else. I go, I have a whole stack on my desk. And they were like, super. See you later. You know. It's the old, you know, Hollywood's the one town where you're gonna die of encouragement. You know, you're like, they like me. No one's calling. But like somewhere in those 17 though, one guy, well, a couple of guys were the managers for Ray Liotta. And this is about 3 or 4 years removed from Goodfellas, and they were like, you should write for Ray. You've got a voice like Ray. And I'm like, yes, I should. I should write for Ray. And so they gave me like an old New Yorker article about corrupt cops in the 80s and just said, you know, what can you come up with this? And I went back and pitched something, and they bought it, and Ray bought it. And my first check was signed by Al Liotta, and I'm like, and it was Ray's dad who held his checkbook in Jersey, like just was like he handled his finances. I'm like, so Ray's paying me? Like, oh yeah, no, Ray's paying me.
Wow.
But and then that's a whole story about them coming in with, you know, my little 25-year-old agent going, okay, they've offered 25,000 for you to write this. I'm like, yes, okay. You said yes, right? Yeah, let's go. And he's like, well, no, I got to counter. Let me do my job. I'm like, don't counter. He goes, well, I'm going to ask for 70. He goes, I'm going to ask for 75. I said, I'm leaving to go to my bar shift. I'm not worth 75. I'll do it for 20. I'll do it for nothing, you know. But he called me back and said, okay, we closed at 55. And so I, you know, died. Like I was like, you know. And then, you know, I was back in New York doing some ride-alongs with some cop buddies because it was a cop story, and went and saw my old acting coach downtown on Mott Street, and I told him, I'm just like, I had massive imposter syndrome. Like they're paying me $55,000. I'm not worth it, and I'm going to be found out, and I can't do this. And he was very, you know, sweet about it. He goes, let's hang out. Let me coach class, and we'll go out for a beer after and talk about it. He goes, I get where you're coming from, because even he was like, fuck, 55,000, Jesus. But as he was coaching these two actors on a scene, he was doing like the as ifs, it's as if that, you got to think of it as if, and he did it, it's as if, I don't know, let's say someone's trying to pay you $55,000 to write a movie, and I'm in the back of the room like suddenly I sit up and he says, listen, let me tell you something. He goes, they're not, and I'm looking at the back of his head while he's coaching the actors, but I'm just back there listening, and he says, they're not paying you to write some movie. They're not paying you to write a script. They're paying you for every time you heard no.
Right. For
every keg you ever changed, for every fight you broke up, for every hardship you've had along the way, every dues you have paid, every due. That's what they're paying you for. You are writing this for free and they're getting a bargain. Because clearly what makes them do that is the script that they liked, that made them hire you. So clearly they like you well enough to give you $55,000. So just do what you do. You're enough. It's that whole, it was that conversation. And I always say that I've now got 100 TV scripts under my belt and 50 NCISs or so. And I still, in Act 3, when I hit that wall and go, fuck, this is where I get found out. This is where they figure out it's all smoke and mirrors, and I'm not smart enough. I can't do this. I'm out of ideas. I should have quit long ago. And I give myself that advice over and over again. Like it never, ever, ever goes away. You think at some point you kind of snap out of it. The only difference I will say now is that, I have the experience to say, okay, here's that feeling again.
Yeah.
I've worked through this before, I'll work through it again. But it's every bit as real as it was 25, 30 years ago. So.
Well, that's great. And I love, you started with that. That was your beginning. But, I went to IMDb. I was looking up your credits.
Oh, dear.
I know IMDb is not always completely accurate, but
okay.
here's what I saw as I looked up.
Okay.
So NYPD Blue was your
That was my first job, and David Milch, when he brought me on there, he goes, I like your writing fine. He had read the Ray Liotta script, which by the way didn't get made. But it became my calling card, though. It got me to like Ron Howard and Kevin Costner and good people. But then when it got to David Milch at NYPD Blue, he goes, I like your writing fine. I like the fact that you attended bar for 12 years, much more. He says, you've lived a life. You've seen characters. You've seen people at their worst, at their best. So suddenly, all those years where I was like, shit, when am I going to not have to do this anymore? I was like really glad I had done it because he said there was value in it.
Life experience,
yeah.
100%.
So
Yeah,
that was
you're
really
not
nice.
making things up. You're
Right.
calling from your life.
Right.
And that led to Brooklyn South, right?
Yep.
3 episodes.
Yep.
Brimstone, 12 episodes. The District, 15 episodes. Third Watch, 65 episodes. Crossing Jordan, 21 episodes. Without a Trace, 24 episodes. Bones, 61 episodes.
Now hold on.
Miami Medical, 12 episodes. Castle, 24 episodes. NCIS, 305 episodes.
Now, if you're doing the math, if you're doing the math, that's produced.
Yes.
I had a producer title for those episodes. How many I actually wrote was not nearly that many, so I didn't write them all.
You were producing.
But I got to be a producer on it, and actually, again, my main function as a producer is to write. So it's not, once you ascend, I always say they give you like better producer titles to keep you from having to pay you more. It's like, we'll make you a co-executive producer now. How about that? But once you hit executive producer, then you actually get some responsibility where they're saying like in casting and in budget and in locations and things like that. So.
But when we talk about your beginning.
Yeah.
And then you hear this. What do
Shit,
you
I'm
think?
well traveled. I know.
What do you think? I mean, this is amazing.
Well, I was really lucky to work on really good shows with really good people, and so I'm definitely blessed in that front. The ones that are, not all of those were big hits. Not all of those were hits for me. Some of those were 1 year and done. Some of them were either I was unhappy there and got out, or they were like, yeah, you're not quite getting the tone of our show. Like, I mean, not everything's a fit for everybody, and I tell that when we have to let people go, I'll be like, it's just join the club. We've all been there, and there's no worse feeling than going, hey, so when do we come back next season? When do we start? Have a seat, Scott. Like, what did I do? And it's like, your writing's good, but you just maybe don't quite. So that's happened on a few shows. So, as good as that sound, those aren't all massive successes for me. I had the co-producer title that gave me 23 episodes on whatever. But I'm like without a trace. But not everything was a fit. So I was well traveled. Yeah. And that when I got to Castle, I loved Castle. But in my first season there, I got a call from a guy, Gary Glassberg, who I'd worked with at Bones. And Bones he and I at Bones had like a bromance. He was just a good dude, and just was like, he got fired because he didn't like his writing. But then, I said, I'm going to work with you again someday, man. You and I are going to get back together again. And then he calls me up. I'm on Castle, and he goes, don't ask me how, but I'm running the #1 show in the world, NCIS. Wow. I'm like, how did that happen? How'd you go from getting fired at Bones to this? But elbow grease, basically. He worked his ass off. And so I left. I went and talked to Nathan Fillion at Castle because I loved it there so much. But I just said, listen, I got an opportunity here because NCIS. And he goes, oh, well, first I was like, I'm leaving. And I think I'm leaving. And he goes, why, man? You just got here. And I said, well, I got an offer from NCIS. He goes, oh, I hear that's the best gig in town. Nathan Fillion was like, all my actor friends, like when they work there, they don't want to leave. Quality of life.
Yeah. On
Castle, we were working 18-hour days, and you'd always see a Fraturday. You'd always see your call time was at 7 on Monday, and then it would always rotate and rotate and rotate, so that you were like, your call time was at 3 in the afternoon on Friday, and then you were watching the sun come up or driving home in broad daylight on Saturday. It was brutal. And NCIS was and is known for like, it was the first place I ever got where I'd hand a script in, and they go, this night scene, could this be day? And I was like, yeah, why? And they like going home to be with their families at dinner time and stuff, and still produce a really great show. So joined the season 9 thinking it might have a year or 2 left in it, and I'm just, next year will be my 15th year on the damn thing. And I just like,
amazing.
From my cold dead hands. I was actually telling Tom and I were talking earlier about he's got a Bob Newhart connection, and Bob Newhart was a guest on our show, playing, and this is how old he was at the time, he was playing David McCallum's mentor. Yeah. So it's like he was wonderful. He was playing a 90-year-old like fighting dementia, and here's David like his 80-year-old protege. It was crazy. Wow. But I'll never forget at lunch we would all eat lunch communally in the sound stages. I'm sitting a couple seats away from Mark Harmon and him. And I'm kind of like, just listening because I'm like, oh, Newhart, because Harmon's just like the greatest guy in the world, and very, very much like we eat together. We eat with grips and with sound people, and I don't want actors taking their meals and going off to the trailers. Like we're all together. We all get to know each other, and that's I think one of the secret sauces of why the show's successful. So I'm sitting there and I'm eavesdropping. No, I'm not really having to eavesdrop because they're just talking out loud, and Newhart just leans over to Harmon at one point and just goes in that halting Bob Newhart stammer, going, say Mark, can I give you some advice? And Harmon's like, sure, Bob, what's up? He goes, ride this fucker into the ground. He said, gigs don't get better than this. He goes, you will miss this when it's gone. Yeah. So here I am in season 9 going, I am going to listen to Bob. So it just keeps going, and I keep sticking with it, and I'm very happy and blessed and grateful to be able to be a part of it.
I'm so happy for you. You're such a great guy. And the situation there, everybody was so friendly, the cast, the
crew. You feel it when you get there.
Yeah,
it's
100%.
And we strive for that. It's
some
just
of
like,
them had been there since JAG, right? Some of the crew?
Oh, a ton of the crew, it's crazy because it shoots up in Santa Clarita, so they've not only been making the drive for the 24 years that show's been running, but they were driving there for JAG, and so they've been driving up there 35 years, and it's insane.
Absolutely
staying power like that is, it's a rare bird in this industry, and it's probably impossible now. I don't even know what's going to go for 24 years now. So.
Yeah, but you've had amazing success, but everybody has chapters in their life, tough things, and tell us about Shane's inspiration.
When I'm working for Ron Howard at this point, doing a biker movie. He liked my Ray Liotta script, and he was going to produce this biker movie for producer friend of his that was going to direct it. And so around that time, I got married, and we got pregnant very fast because we were like in our late 30s at that point. So it's like let's get on it. So we scheduled the honeymoon around her ovulation cycle. It was like, we're gonna do this. So Shane was born in March of '97. Got married in '96. He was born in '97, and we didn't realize in utero that he'd had this terrible disability called spinal muscular atrophy, where he was basically born paralyzed from about here down. So he never drew a breath on his own. He was immediately intubated, rushed off to the NICU. And it took about a week to diagnose him because we didn't know what he had, but they said the best case scenario was he was going to live in a wheelchair. So, in the midst of wrapping our brains around that and trying to figure out how to raise a child in a wheelchair, I remember my sister had come in from New York and a buddy of mine had come down from up north, and I was telling him, man, okay, I got to kick my career into high gear. I'm getting paid to write these movies. Nothing's getting made. I got to figure something out. You know, because I got to pay for his medical care. I got to retrofit the house with ramps if he's going to live in a wheelchair, all this stuff. And also was doing a little bit of research at the time too on what it would entail raising a child in a wheelchair, and I'll get to that in a second. But I said, I just got to up my game financially to do this. And literally that day, or maybe it might have been the next day, I always go back and forth when it was, but at this point, 29-year-old agent called me up and said, he goes, don't ask me how. He goes, I know this is a terrible time, but like David Milch at NYPD Blue got a hold of your Ray Liotta script and really wants you to write television. So I said, and I was too naive to even know. I said, is that a good thing? He goes, yeah, it's a really good thing. He goes, so they said, he'll wait for you, though. Just do what you got to do. So we, anyway, we were told Shane's, condition was terminal, and we took him off event at 13 days. Wow. Then in the midst of that grieving period, I basically, I wrote my audition script for NYPD Blue. I met with David Milch, and he was, very sweet, but he just said, so what do you say, you want to write television? And stupid me, in the midst of all my grief and all that stuff, I still had that fear too, because I just kind of went, to be honest, I've always been more of a feature guy. And I'm sitting at lunch at the commissary with David Milch, who's like one of the all-time great characters in this business, and he just goes, really? When's the last time you heard action? And I'm like, never. He goes, come with me, you'll hear action every day. So I was like, okay. So he wouldn't take no for an answer, which I really am grateful to him for. But at any rate, that year was a year of my wife grieving on the couch. She'd had a couple of miscarriages after that. I would drive to work, put on a happy face at work, but I always say that I was glad the car knew the way. They knew between Valley Village and the Fox lot. I would just somehow I'd get home and somehow I'd get to work. It was really rough, but. And then about a year later, my sister sent an article. We'd never heard of spinal muscular atrophy before, but my sister was like, "Hey, look at this SMA. I'm reading about it now in this article about a woman that built a playground in Connecticut after her son who had died of SMA." So we heard that, and we were like, "Oh." My wife was like, "I want to do that. Let's build a playground here." One of the things we learned in raising a child with a disability was that the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA. In '91, it was enacted, and it gave us oversized bathroom stalls, and it gave us those ramped curbsides. But in the area of playgrounds, it gave you a cement ramp leading to a sand moat with play equipment inside. So kids with wheelchairs could go to the playground and then watch other kids play. So these playgrounds, well, they'd built their own in Connecticut, but the city of LA was like, you can't build your own, but you can work with a playground company if it can work out. So they donated 2 acres of land at a playground in Griffith Park. And we were like, 2 acres, that's a lot. But it was like, but we over the next year, 2 years, in 2000, we opened the first fully playable, fully accessible, fully inclusive playground of its kind, with like rubberized surfacing and equipment that kids with disabilities can actually like wheel their wheelchairs onto and swing, and actually go up onto platforms that give them height. Kids in wheelchairs spend a lot of time doing this. And so this gave them like this. They got to look down upon things and stuff. So we opened the first one, and I thought, okay, well, that was amazing, and we're done. And by this time, 3 years later, my career had moved on from working in the Botchko camp to working on other shows. But after we opened, these parents came to us and said, our son Aiden loves this place. It's the only place he can play with his brothers. Severely disabled kid in a wheelchair. But it's just a far drive from West LA. Can we get a second one? Would you be up? And we were like, you know what? We have the infrastructure in place. We tapped out all of our friends for donations. Because when you lose a child, everybody wants to help, but there's absolutely nothing you can do for someone that when they lose a child. But a year or so later, when you said, hey, we're going to build a playground in our son's memory, everybody shows up. And so $5 donations, $50, $500, like everybody. And we had a few minor corporate sponsors, but mostly it was just, real grassroots effort. Luckily, these folks had their own friends, and so they raised money faster than we did, and we opened up a second one called Aiden's Place in West LA. Anyway, long story short, it snowballed, and it's kind of just taken on a life of its own. We're up to like 82 playgrounds worldwide. So it's kind of like just did this thing. So. And now it's called, thanks. And now it's called Inclusion Matters by Shane's Inspiration. We put the mission in the title. So if you go to inclusionmatters.org, you'll get to see what we do and all that stuff. But it definitely was, for me, it pulled my head out of my ass of my shitty little career. Of this is all that matters is my career. And it gave me just something else to focus upon, which I think is why my IMDb is so long, because I think I had some degree of perspective that this wasn't the begin and end all. Like this wasn't my this was my living, not my life necessarily. But it sounds trite, or it sounds like one of those, a bad bumper sticker, but it is. It's important, I think, just to and I always tell people, just you don't have to start an organization to get your head out of your ass, but when you feel down on yourself and why isn't it working out for me, and lots of poor me's and my's, it's pull your head out of your ass and really do something for someone else. It's the greatest feeling in the world, and it never fails, and it sounds, like I said, it sounds trite, but it's it's a cliche for a reason, because it's really true, and it's something I didn't know. I had to learn that the hard way. Not that I was an asshole before, but I was I would do nice things for people before then, but not on this scale. So it's definitely, and it's like I said, I think without trying, it's helped my career. I think if I look back in retrospect, it's I think I was helped by it for sure.
100%, and you bring such a beautiful spirit that I'm sure comes from tragedy as well, that you want to.
I thought it would make me more noble, but within a couple of months after my son died, I was fighting over parking spaces. But again, I was just oh, all right, now I'm still me. But I definitely know that I wasn't getting out of the car to fight over them. I was like, you asshole. But no, I mean, you just kind of you pick your battles, and you realize life's too short and precious, and so it like I said, it changed my perspective a little bit, especially in the area of my career where. All the years previous, it was either as an actor or as a writer. When is it going to happen for me? Yeah. When? I want it yesterday. I want success. I want to make it. That changed when we lost Shane. It definitely made me go all right, I should give up that pursuit and just think of my life in another way. So.
Well, it's beautiful what you've done with it. It's amazing.
Thanks.
And. But to shift gears to talk about acting.
Let's talk about our shitty little careers.
I do want to ask you, when I used to audition for NCIS over at Paramount, were you ever in that room? There was a small room with about
oh God, it was awful. But I mean,
people.
I can't stand. I'll take in-person auditions anytime.
Yeah.
But yeah, we gave them the smallest little room that we would cram with
12 or 14
ridiculous amount of people, and the door weighed 1,000 pounds. So the humiliation of auditioning and all of us going, thank you. And I was probably the one person in the room, because I had been an actor, going, hey, thank you, that was great.
Yeah.
Even if it wasn't great, but it was if they put the work in, it was fucking great. Because I had a producer go what, is everybody great? I'm like, you're all. The worst thing I remember hearing as an actor was, thank you. I was like, that, if I worked on it, they gotta go sit home in traffic now and beat themselves up. I'm like, that was great. And I wasn't lying. It was they put the work in. There were some people that phoned it in. I didn't say that too. But and then the humiliation of then having to open a 1,000-pound door after every leave. So.
No, I remember it.
The room was a shoebox. Yeah.
But I always wondered what happened after we left. I mean, you saw maybe 5 or 6 people for a role. How did the round table go that they decided who?
Well, we didn't. No one ever left. And we still do this now in Zoom auditions. We don't watch and go, well, obviously he was the best, or she was that's the one. We wait till everybody reads, and we keep our stuff private until we then turn to the director. We defer to the director, who's often a guest director. We have a few in-house directors that do lots of episodes, but we'll go, okay, James Whitmore Jr., who'd you like? Or in your case, it was Lionel Coleman. Who do you like? He goes, well, I like that Gregg Binkley guy, and then I'm kind of yes. Good, we liked him because he's one on my list too. But we let him go through his number 1s and 2s, and then if mine's different, I would say, well, I actually prefer this person or that person, and then we like to discuss it. So it's between me, the director, and about 2 or 3 other producers, who just either I'll sit down on other writers' sessions, or we have a couple of non-writing producers who are just in production. So, and we'll debate about it. And there was a guy who's retired now, but an older producer who just was lovely, but. I always felt like he'd read the script on the freeway driving down the, because I remember him just going like, oh, no, I didn't see the character that way, and I was like, dude, you read this on the freeway, like I've lived with this character for a month, I know this, you know. But here's where the big skill kicks in is and this was harder, and too, it took me a little while to kind of get it. I'm a nice guy, but the ability to play well with others is definitely like probably the biggest asset you could have in this business in terms of just
for the actors once they're on the set, or
yes, and just being you know, not selling yourself out, whether you're a writer and you're getting notes from a network or whatever, and you know you want to fight for something. You're a team player, and you're a team player certainly as a guest actor. You show up super pleasant and be somebody that we want to work with again, because unless you end up dead on our show, we bring people back all the time. Yeah. Hey, that person was cool, let's bring them back, you know, if we have opportunities to. But for a writer or a producer and an actor in many ways, it's just like be collaborative, you know. I didn't like this so actor that the director liked, but you know, I tell you what, give me this person for this role, I'll give you that person for that role, and we kind of meet in the middle. It's like, great, okay, super, you know.
I wasn't sure how much pull the director of an episode has in episodic television.
We try to respect their opinion, because we're like, well, you've got to direct them.
Yeah.
You got to make it, you know. And so there's some directors that are like, I can get it out of them, kind of thing. Which is always a little bit hard, because it's, you know, it's the whole, if you get a stage actor that's kind of big, you can always bring them down. But sometimes when someone comes in really down, you're like, can they bring up? Can they bring it up? I'm not sure, but a lot of directors will say like, oh, I can get them there, or you know, or I can tone them down, or I can work with them, you know. So, and like I said, we have deference to especially some of our veteran directors, some of our older directors that have been at it a little while.
Yeah.
So.
Actually, Lionel Coleman's going to come work with our students in 2
He's
months.
the shit, man. He is so great.
He's hot too, right? He works on so many shows.
He's doing really, really well, and he's a dear friend. He's a really good friend. He just directed my last one that aired last night.
Yeah, exactly. An introduction to LL Cool J again.
Yeah,
it's
who's also the shit. He's amazing.
Yeah.
I hadn't worked with Todd before, and he, you know, I know he's a big star. Obviously, you know, amazing musical star and a rock and roll Hall of Famer, and so I was a fan of his music, and then I was a fan of, you know, I was NCIS LA. I'm too busy working on my own show to watch their show, but I know he had some chops and stuff, and I'd seen him in some movies and stuff. Then he shows up to our set and just kills it. Yeah. Not just as a really good actor, but just as a kind person. Just as a really talk about working well with others. Showing up, knows his lines cold, has thought about them. He's got his acting coach sitting next to him. You know, he's got his own makeup person. Like he shows up with his team, and is nothing but cool and kind, and he's got his beatbox, and he's playing music between takes, and he's playing every genre of music. I go, you kind of like it all, don't you? He goes, I really do. I really do. But just again, a guy that and they told us when we brought him in for the show, and for Lionel too, that hey, we're going to steer him toward NCIS New York. So can you have his character lean like toward, or trying to figure out last night's ep was part one of a two-parter that he's in, and I kind of had him talk about, you know, wondering what his next move's going to be and all that, and so then he's going to obviously then reveal like, I think I'm going to go to New York, and then that's what kicks off NCIS New York. So not quite a pilot, but just to steer his character that way. So
I actually did NCIS LA too. He interrogated me and made me cry.
He's the best, isn't he?
He is great, but I didn't like that he made me cry. I thought about giving him
one of these. He's a big dude.
But it turns out
he's
a little bigger than me. Yeah, but he was.
But
cool
how
to
sweet
work
between
with.
takes.
Yeah.
I mean, the loveliest guy in the world. Yeah, really nice. Yeah,
now,
I'm a huge fan.
You do have a lot of guest actors that have been on the show, you know, throughout the years. I was looking at some of the names. I don't know if you were there when they were on, but Jamie Lee Curtis, Billy D. Williams, Sterling K. Brown, Glenn Powell, Charles Durning. Of course, Gary Cole and Mark Harmon. But what do you notice about the really great actors with their work? Is there anything in specific that comes to mind that makes them stand out just with their work?
Sterling K. Brown's funny because I remembered him from Third Watch, which we shot in New York, and he just had a small minor detective role that he was sort of this lead's like number two, and maybe only did like 4 or 5 episodes from him. But I remember the moment we clocked him, we were like, that guy's on another level. Like our people are doing one thing, and he is deep. He is that guy. And so I've always kind of had my eye halfway on him, and got to talk to him a little bit about it when he came on our show. But so his success was certainly no surprise.
But what was it about him that just, it was an aura about him, or a depth to him, or a presence to him?
It's funny, once people become stars, like you say, oh, well, they have this presence, this aura. It's like, well, a lot of it's too, as you've seen them on TV and stuff, it's, you kind of, you imbue them with, although I will say, when I met Cool J, I was like, this guy's got presence, he really has whatever it is, he had it, there's a level of confidence and calm and self-love, and even in the ones that are, insanely talented. Jamie Lee Curtis is super cool, and she's been very supportive of Shane's inspiration over the years too. And the people that are going, holy shit, Jamie Lee Curtis, and then by the end of the week they're like, Jamie Lee, hey, they're like, it's like she just instant relationship with people, just instant. And again, I think it really does start with, kindness. I think just people come off as kind, and even if you're shy and maybe not wanting to interject or not wanting to, like just I'll wait for my moment to say a little something, reading the room, making sure who is the climate good here. I've been in some toxic sets, where maybe there's some ill-behaved actors. A lot of times it trickles down from either the showrunner or the number one in your call sheet. And in the case of NCIS and Castle and those things, like the number ones were super cool, and so everything was cool. But there's been a couple of shows that some of the ones that maybe I just had one season on. So I call my agent, get me the fuck out of here.
Well, I know we do want to get to the actors doing a little bit of work, but I did want to give guys an opportunity to ask any questions. Go ahead, Claire.
So I like to write, but I get really attached to my first drafts, and even when I know that they can be better, I don't know how to.
What did I just say? You got to work well with others. No, okay, go ahead.
I don't know how to go about doing the second draft. How do you do second?
Yeah, that's a hard lesson. It is, because it's again, you're wrestling with the thing, like going, oh God, I hope this, you're wrestling with writing it, but then when it's done, it's like, I'm Shakespeare, look what I did. I wrote fade in, I wrote fade out, it's fantastic, But then you give it to someone to read, and someone you trust, and if they don't love it as much as you do, it hurts. It's like, it's wounding, It's like, actors, it's hard because you're the product and you get up there, and when you hear no, it's like they're rejecting you. It's just as painful when they're rejecting something you put this much love and thought into and all this stuff. And for you see your movie and your TV show so clearly on the page, it's brilliant. And you're like, pull one thread out of this and the whole thing just collapses on itself. And I had to learn the hard way that's not so, that other people can read it and go, what would help this thing? So I think I have the ability to recognize, I can kind of recognize bad notes where I'm just sort of like, your job is to give notes, so you're just giving notes for their own sake. So there's lots of times where the network will note me or whatever, and I always joke, like, everybody gets to pee on the tree. The guard at the gate gives me notes. It's just like, hey, your third act's a little weak. But you gotta, if you really want to do this as a pursuit. There was a joke I heard about playwrights, someone going like, yeah, I write, I'm more of a playwright. It's like, oh really, what drawer do you keep them in? Because playwrights, no one changes a word of a play. For some reason they're afforded the, you honor every word. It's like, well, yeah, if your name's Arthur Miller, you honor every word. But it's like, who the hell am I? But in television or film, you're gonna get notes, and you just got to get good at getting them, and better at having them, getting them from and not getting defensive. And like I said, I learned that the hard way, because I sometimes get notes that I didn't care for, and I'd let the person know, or I get defensive about them, like, I'll give notes, and I recognize it right away, and I'll try to talk to younger writers when I'm giving a note. And they're like, yeah, no, what are you talking about? It's because I did mention it on page 3. I'm like, I didn't get it. I didn't, I don't see it the way you're seeing it. And then in the area of television, if you're going to write for an existing show, I rewrote a Bones for Hart Hanson, who's the creator of Bones. Just goes, could you just take a look at this and see what you think? And I read it, and he goes, just do a rewrite on it. And the writer that I did it, whose script I rewrote, said, this doesn't even sound like me anymore. And I'm like, I know, it sounds like a Bones. Your job is to make it sound like the show you're on. Like, you need to mimic the style of it. You can absolutely get your own voice heard in there. Mark Harmon used to say he could tear the front page off of any script, read 10 pages of the script or 5, and be able to tell what writer on the staff wrote what based upon our style. But we were still writing NCIS. But whether it was the jokes we were telling, or the tempo of the scene, or Scott's more mushy and Steve's more computers and, nerd stuff. And, so he always could figure that out. But your voice will get in there. But if you really are serious about pursuing it, notes are just a fact of life, and they suck, but you have to get through that. It's part of the gauntlet. Everything gets noted. Hemingway said the first draft of anything is shit. It's like, that's just a hard, cold truth. You might love it, but it's like, let other people have a look at it. It may not all be right, but you'll hear some other perspectives that'll maybe give you better ideas and go, oh, okay.
Okay, Heather.
How do you come to blank page?
It's the worst.
I don't know that's the story you want. Like, do you just start writing and then you...
Well, people will say, where do you come up with all your ideas and stuff? It's either like, inspiration or just desperation. It's like, they need your pitch in 2 days and you go, shit, I got no story or whatever. But in television, you're blessed to have a writing staff. Feature writers, it's more of a solitary endeavor. It's sort of like it's just you and your computer going, staff, you can kind of go, hey, I got this seedling of an idea. What do you guys think of this? And it's probably dumb, but and then it's like, well, what if you added this to it? Okay, and you get other brains in there to help you kind of suss out an idea. And you have, at least for me and for others, some others that work in television, it's like scenes I'd like to see. I don't know what this episode's about, but I'd really like to get, Mark Harmon's, stuck in a well, or some shit like that. And I don't see it yet, but I wonder, and then people start feeding you idea, oh yeah, I could do that, or what about that? And then, we work it out on a board, and we'll write like a one-pager to sell to the network of like, this episode's gonna be about this, and then figure out the beats of what happens on the board. But so that really, you're not really dealing with the blank page. But like me, for example, now, I'm going into my next season, like, what's your next episode? And I can't stand when crew members I love my crew, but they always be like, it's a good episode, Scott, man, what's your next one? And I'm like, can I just enjoy this one? I have no idea. I'm like, I'm out of ideas, I don't know. But eventually you kind of get one. You kind of, like I said, a seed of an idea, you kind of go, okay. There's no such thing as writer's block. If you have writer's block, it just means you haven't studied your subject matter well enough. You don't know it well enough. Like if I was going to write a script about bartending, I would never get writer's block because I know the subject so well. And but the blank page is a daunting thing of how do I get into this? How do I start this? Then you just ask yourself, well, why am I writing this? What's the scene I'd like to see? I want to write that confrontation between the mother and her daughter. That's the conversation. I want to dramatize the fight I had with my mother 20 years ago. Well, start off writing that scene. And then build a movie. Yeah, I'll win this time. Yeah, I'll show her. So start with that, and then you'll find a place for that somewhere in the body of it. Maybe it is the first scene of your movie, or maybe it's maybe it comes in Act 3 somewhere. But it gets you off that blank screen thing where it's like, how do I start this? They always say great scripts, aren't written; they're rewritten. So you will get notes on it yourself, and sometimes I have to write 10 pages to realize, wait, no, fuck, this is the wrong approach. I'm wrong. I'll use this scene and that scene later, but how this is going to start is this. But I don't know that vantage point until I write that failed 10 pages where I go like, shit, no. You'll get more clarity as you go. So don't worry about getting that blank page filled with great stuff right away. Just like know that like if you write long and hard enough and think about it and plenty of time staring out windows and be less attached to typing than you are to like seeing it in your head and thinking, you'll be on your way, to at least getting past that initial blank page, getting something on the page and liking it,
Okay, I do want to get to the scenes here, so I want to wind up this, but I do want to ask you, because I'm sure they're interested, you see self-tapes a lot. Mm-hmm. What do you see in actors that catches your eye?
I really feel for actors now. I have lots of friends who are veteran actors who are good actors and have worked a ton, and suddenly now the industry asks them to also be DPs.
Right.
Light yourselves and get a little mic and And I've had to talk to some friends that were really good actors that weren't getting parts because we're talking about I couldn't see their eyes, or they were so far away, they were in the frame, they were just that. So I have to call my friends going, would you fucking invest the money and just put it, or just hang a sheet up and get a decent light and get yourself a lavalier, is that what they call this?
Yeah.
I know that the industry's changed. I'm a good actor, you know I am. I'm like, I know, but the other people that I'm with in the room don't. And they need to see you. So it's like, pretend you're on the show and get yourself framed right and make sure we have access to your eyes. You don't have to stare down the lens, but it's like, I don't ever mind that when people do, when they're trying to make a point. But making me a character in their scene, but it's almost like you'd rather just direct it that way. But I feel for people, again, that they now not only have to put in the work and the performance, but also be able to, and we have tapes that we watch, but we also have now live Zoom auditioning, which helps a lot, and actors seem to like that, and that helps a lot. Because now we can say, could you move closer? Could you do, we can direct them in that right way. And then it's the trick is also too, we're looking at resumes going, okay, what's this actor's experience level? And that doesn't necessarily like negate greener or newer actors, but like we do have to take into account that like, okay, this person's great in their kitchen. Now, if I put them opposite Mark Harmon with lights and crew standing around them, do they have it to bring it? And we'll roll the dice sometimes, and sometimes we've been wrong, and sometimes some veteran actors have come in and choked up on the thing for inexplicably, because it's the nature of the thing, depending on what the workload is and the amount of heft of their part, But what I've noticed, in the live ones, it's sort of like being in the room where, the pros come in and just, hey, how's it going? Yep. Good stuff. All right. Where do I need to slate? Yeah. Okay. No, just go. Okay. There's sort of and this I hated as an actor was like, don't look like you need it too much. That kind of thing. It's like, oh well, Jesus, I need this. I want this so bad. But coming going, yeah, I don't care, whatever. Let's just roll them and see what we get. But no, that's and because sometimes you can sit there and you feel like they can totally tell I need this. Or. And again, I deal with a lot of even actor friends will call me like, what did I do wrong? And I'm like, you didn't do anything wrong. You read against Gregg Binkley. You took your part, It's like,
and no chance.
And if I could give them a tip that helps them, I go, well, again, your camera's set up, or, well, you kind of hit it a note. Well, you should have directed me. I'm like, I'm not the director. The director's the director. I'm the writer. I'm just, I might whisper to him something, but we're all watching him on Zoom now, so I don't have that opportunity. I'll text sometimes, going, have them do it again and have them do it this way. But sometimes, again, you're seeing lots of people and you just want to get them in and out. Auditioning's a necessary evil. My buddy Michael Beach was who I worked with on Third Watch. He 6 years on Third Watch, and he left the show, and then I was having lunch with him one day, and he was reading for a pilot. I'm like, dude, you got 6 years of tape of brilliant performance. Like, why are you auditioning? He goes, dude, I love to act. I get a chance to act, man. What are you talking about? This is what I do. I'm going to send a tape, offer only. So he goes, no, it was good material. I like doing it. So it's like if you can approach it that way and just and not approach auditioning from a place of I got to get this, but just as a hey, I get a chance to play with these words that this person wrote, and if the writer's on the Zoom or in the room, nail those words. Don't screw around with them, or if you got it, I just got this 5 minutes ago. I'm really sorry. I'm going to hold this in my hand. It's like fine, great, give it a shot. David Selby is this actor. He's in his 80s now, and Dark Shadows. He was not Barnabas Collins. He was the other guy, but. Oh God, yes, he was Quentin. Anyway, lovely, and I wrote a part for an 80-year-old man. We got this like amazing array of older actors that came in, and ultimately it went to Bruce Davison, who was Willard, oddly enough. And David Selby came in and thought it was a meeting. He just thought, oh gosh, I'm sorry. And again, poor guy. He's like, not hip with but he's on his camera, he's on his phone, and someone set him up but he was well lit well enough. And he's like, oh gosh, I didn't know this was, I thought I was just meeting to say hello, just to make sure my brain was working and stuff. But gosh, and then he's like, oh wait, there's sides here. Well, let's just do them. I'm telling you, this guy, he nailed this thing. We ended up going with Bruce Davison, but we all sat in awe while this guy cold read from his phone. He'd feed him the line, he'd look at his phone, and he'd respond in such a way. I was like, we're watching a complete professional. This man has not lost a thing.
Wow.
Whether he's a household name or what, but it's just clearly a guy that's been at the craft for 50, 60 years. it was inspiring. It was just sort of like and just no panic in him at all. It was just like, just give me the lines. I got it here. Let me just cold read it, and knew how to take his time with it. And it took a little longer, but we were more than happy to indulge him because we were like, it was mind blowing. When he got off, Jimmy Whitmore was the director, and Jimmy was like, son of a bitch, that was amazing. And I was like, I know. And we never talked between auditions, but we're like, that was incredible. But man, it was inspiring.
Yeah, well, this has
I don't
been
know why I
inspiring.
got off on that.
Yeah, that's
that,
all right. This has been
you know.
inspiring visiting with you. But we have a number of actors that are going to come up and do a quick scene. We're going to act as though it's an audition to see how they can handle with confidence. But this has been so wonderful, Scott. I really appreciate your time. And he's going to be here, so let's give a big thank you to it.
Thanks for having me.
Well, I cannot thank Scott Williams enough for coming to our class and sharing his wealth of information and inspiration. Really, all the students got so much from him and just hanging around him because he's an amazing man. Really appreciated also the opportunity for the students to get up and do a mock audition for them. That's going to be in a separate video, so be sure to check that out. And if you're ever in the Los Angeles area and want to come over to North Hollywood to check out our class, the Working Actors Workshop, we're here to work out and learn and grow, because to be a working actor long term, you must be ready when your opportunity comes. So we work on pursuing acting and being prepared for our opportunities when they come. So come check out our studio. Many more guests coming, more showrunners, producers, writers, directors, successful actors. So a lot going on. Thanks for checking out this episode. We'll see you next time.